Armed with the advice that she shouldn't find a random guy to make her happy, Devi sets out to find a random guy to make her happy. Hey, it's Nicole, you don't care that much? Let's move on. Never Have I Ever came highly recommended to me, by which I mean one single person requested it. This show is a Netflix coming-of-age comedy about an Indian American girl dealing with the death of her father, or more accurately, repressing it by obsessing over high school drama instead. Another interesting fact is this actress, who has never acted professionally, beat out 15,000 other hopefuls for this role. Naturally, this meant that I had to take an extra 15 minutes to grieve someone younger than me being infinitely more successful. Comparing myself to younger prodigies is this cute thing I do for anyone in any field, including Olympic gymnasts, even though I've shown neither interest nor promise in that field. Not with that attitude, you won't. Anyway, Never Have I Ever was praised for its South Asian representation and for breaking Asian stereotypes. Any show that presents itself as representative will be met with high expectations and some unrealistic criticism. Some Indian Americans and other Asians felt seen. Others felt like the show was rife with stereotypes, including that typical plot point of an arranged marriage, and also felt like Indian culture was often made to be the butt of many jokes. Let's speedrun the pilot so my later analysis will have a bit more context. The pilot opens with Devi praying to her gods that after a traumatic past year, she'll be a cool sophomore. At this point, I was unsure as to whether I would like the show. Something about the way Devi talks here just sounds like writing.
1. I'd like to be invited to a party with alcohol and hard drugs. I'm not gonna do them. I just like the opportunity to say, no cocaine for me, thanks. I'm good.
Like joke delivery. I mean, not all comedy shows, not all comedy shows, have to be realistic. I mean, Brooklyn Nine-Nine is completely absurd and we just accept it as it is. Lines that scream prepared and witty just certainly are not teen speak. The wacky, over-the-top tone reminded me of the Mindy Project, and I breathed a sigh of relief when I looked this up and found that Mindy Kaling actually produced the show and I was not, in fact, being racist. Mindy Kaling has a distinct voice, and it really comes through in these disconcerting, breezy lines delivered by a really innocent-looking actress.
I just want him to be a stone-cold hottie who could rock me all night long.
The first 2 minutes immediately established the show's hyperbolic, absurd tone.
At Davies Spring Orchestra concert, Mohan had a heart attack.
Mohan!
He died.
For some reason, which will be explained later, hothead tennis player John McEnroe is narrating Davies' life story up to this point.
I am legendary tennis player John McEnroe.
Point to Mr. McEnroe.
A week later, Devi's leg stopped working out of the blue and she was confined to a wheelchair for 3 months. What ultimately unparalyzed her was seeing the hottest guy at school, Paxton. Psychosomatic paralysis, or paralysis triggered by stress and trauma, is a real thing. The show pretty much glosses over the event, and I know that's supposed to mirror how Devi deflects from her own grief, just like how the paralysis is this suppressed grief manifesting itself. However, paralysis is such a serious trauma that it was really jarring to see it thrown away like that. It makes me wonder if this plot point was entirely necessary or could have been done better. We meet Devi's mother, a strict immigrant parent, and her cousin Kamala, whose beauty makes men ride their bikes into recycling bins. Here we're served with some apparent stereotypes and hints that this show will explore Devi's relationship to her Indian American identity. We're then introduced to her 2 best friends, Eleanor and Fabiola. Fabiola is captain of the robotics team and Eleanor president of the drama club. Eleanor especially is super out there and quirky.
I didn't ride the bus, I rollerbladed.
Please.
And I had to keep reminding myself that this show was supposed to be exaggerated, but I'm not entirely sure as to why they're friends other than all of them just being unpopular and intense. It doesn't really help that these two say a lot of things as a unit.
Boyfriends?
Since Devi wants to be cool, she pushes her friends into a rebrand by getting boyfriends. She decides whom they date, of course. Devi's academic nemesis and person I immediately felt she was going to end up with, Ben Gross, calls this friend group the UN.
You know what? You shouldn't call us the UN. It's racist and offensive and honest.
Oh, like the United Nations? No, we call you the UN because you're unfuckable nerds.
Funny characters get away with a lot for me.
I'm supposed to go cheer on my girlfriend's field hockey practice. You know, I support women.
Shut up, my dad's hot.
Though he does start so nasty that it is a little odd how kind and nice he becomes throughout the season. Devi shows more of her hothead, irreverent personality when interacting with her therapist, who gives her a grief journal. Later that night, Devi dreams of her father showing her his favorite tennis player, John McEnroe, our narrator. He's a famous hothead, and Devi's father encourages her to stand up for herself. Upon waking up, Devi shows some rare sadness and tosses away her grief journal. It's a nice touch. After Devi and Ben argue and get punished, they catch Eleanor with her secret boyfriend and find out that Fabiola knew. Angry, Devi returns home, throws this textbook her mom had blessed by the gods, gets chewed out by her mom, and then runs to her therapist, overstepping who knows how many boundaries. Devi's therapist tells her that a boyfriend won't change anything and that she should just focus on something that would make herself happy. Armed with the advice that she shouldn't find a random guy to make her happy, Devi sets out to find a random guy to make her happy. She directly propositions Paxton in a scene that made me want to leave my body.
I could name every class you've had for the last 2 years.
Isn't she a new sophomore? She wouldn't have been in high school for the past 2 years.
I was wondering if you would ever consider having sex with me? Looking forward to it. We'll circle back about it.
Anyway, the pilot ends with Devi gleefully recording in her grief journal that she's going to sleep with Paxton. Nice touch. While I was unsure about Never Have I Ever at first, the pilot won me over a little and I got more and more into it with each episode. It certainly wasn't the predictable plot. I mean, it's got the standard coming-of-age elements, like the uncool girl trying to get with this hot guy, but probably ending up with her arch-nemesis. It does have that element of grief exploration and, of course, South Asian representation, but the show is funny and it has a lot of heart, and for me, that's what carried it. The characters are also charming, and I can find something in most of the characters that speaks to me. Devi is funny and has a personality, but she's also rude, self-centered, lashes out at people, and makes a ton of stupid decisions. When I was frustrated with her, and this was frequently, I had to keep reminding myself that if she was just nice and always knew how to do the right thing, there wouldn't be a show. I liked how the show had Devi be like, I'm not like other Indians.
Even though Devi was Indian, she didn't think of herself as Indian like these girls.
And then had other Indians/Indian Americans disagree with her and appreciate and respect their own culture.
They seem cool here, but can you imagine how dorky they would look doing this anywhere else?
That's my sister Preeti. Her Bollywood dance group was in the Macy's Day Parade on a float sponsored by Ziploc. So who looks dorky now?
Am I gonna be this insecure Indian guy who hates doing Indian things? Because that's his own identity. It's just a shitty one.
As you can see, I am not Indian, but I also went through a phase when I was younger, internalizing a lot of shame about my culture and wanting to distance myself from being too Asian. Aside from that, not to invalidate people's insecurities, but when Devi was talking about Kamala being so beautiful as though she herself was ugly,
Devi, make sure you favor your left side. Kamala, both your sides are equally good.
this actress is so pretty. Do people not think so? And even though she's intense, Devi comes across as self-assured and delivers quick comebacks in school, which makes it a little less believable for me as to how unpopular she is. Oh, and how is she doing so well academically when we never see her study or really think about it, like outside of school grounds? In terms of Devi's narrator, I couldn't figure out whether it worked or not. It's like, I understand it, but I don't like it. The contrast in an older white man narrating Devi's story is funny.
Hey, this was really uncomfortable for me to watch.
And he made fun of the form, just like how the show engages with tropes. The concept is similar to those boyfriend narrates my makeup routine videos, and those are pretty well received. But even after knowing that John McEnroe was her father's favorite tennis player, I still kept wondering, so why is he narrating? It took me out of the story. Devi's dead dad appears in her dream and expresses his love for John McEnroe.
Come, sit down. I want to show you something. This is John McEnroe. He is my favorite player of all time.
Did Devi know this before he died? Did she know that this player existed? Even after McEnroe made a quick cameo in the finale, it was still like, why is he narrating? Does she have a connection to McEnroe other than her dad mentioning he's also a hothead? Does McEnroe come back? Is it one of those things where you say, if there was a movie about my life, I would want Scarlett Johansson to play me? Anyway, yeah, if you think a lot about it, it might make sense, but it just distracted me. I did like the show's treatment of supporting characters, introducing them as one note, but then giving them a little time to show some depth. Beyond delivering references to The Good Place,
You're basic.
Eleanor has this plotline with her flaky mom. Fabiola comes to terms with her sexuality. The two do act like sidekicks.
Okay, let's just stick to the plan. What's our goal for today?
To make conversation.
Fabiola and Eleanor were confident their friend had become completely unhinged.
But I'm sure they'll get a little more time in season 2. Paxton, whose actor was apparently 27 or 28 to Devi's 17, also has more to him than being the hot guy. Perhaps the bar is on the floor, but he seems semi-considerate and protective of his sister who has Down syndrome. A couple things with Paxton. I never really bought why he liked Devi because I don't think that was really explored. His sister said that she's not like other girls.
I kiss a lot of girls.
Yeah, but most of them suck. And I like Devi.
But we don't see him see that for himself. Second, and this was a common criticism of the Mindy Project, Mindy Kaling's previous show, 2, POC love interests are so often white. Apparently, Paxton was a white character, and the show only made him mixed when they heard Paxton's actor speak Japanese to one of the crew members. As for Ben, I loved Ben. He made the jump from nasty arch-nemesis
Psychosomatic, which my dad says means fake,
to sweet, caring boy really quickly, but he was still lovable. You really feel for his loneliness, and I love the shots of him in his empty, huge mansion. It's interesting because when we think representation, we don't typically go for straight white men, but Ben's rich, privileged kid perspective was still depicted with a lot of empathy. And now we get to the question of representation. Personally, I think that Never Have I Ever, which again is an exaggerated show, is trying to explore stereotypes by using and then engaging with them. In trying to be hyperbolic, which is what teens do, Devi and the show make some off-color jokes, which I understand might bother some people.
It's Ben's birthday, and you know how sad and lonely he is? If I don't go, he might hurt himself. I said I wish the Nazis would kill Ben. I can't take it. I'm like a straight-up indentured servant.
But I think the show is trying to say that even if you as an individual meet certain stereotypes, that doesn't mean that they define you. For example, as a child, I happened to meet a lot of the East Asian stereotypes, like being quiet, academic, etc. But that didn't mean that that was all there was to me. Devi's mother and Kamala fit some preconceived notions, but they're not one-dimensional. This show is not meant to encapsulate the entirety of a culture, just one story that has pieces that some people can relate to. This scene, for example, I loved.
I didn't think you were someone who believed in therapy.
I don't. It's for white people. I mean, clearly there's some exceptions.
But another dimension of the representation question is whether it's accurate to teens. Aside from the opening and the occasional joke that falls flat, I do think that teens could potentially see themselves in this. There are a couple reasons, one of which being that Never Have I Ever is a lot smarter about using slang than, say, Ginny and Georgia.
Get juicy with it.
Young people have a keen ear for when teen speak is forced. The show leans into that, having this teacher really go for it and then cutting to the characters' uncomfortable reactions.
Genocide is not 100. And systemic racism is not Liddy.
The history teacher is completely oblivious, and we get to laugh at him for being so cluelessly offensive.
Like, slavery and the Holocaust.
His assignments
App ideas that could have been used to mitigate the atrocities of the Second World War
are completely wild. Overall, I think that Never Have I Ever is a positive step in the right direction. It was a lot for me at first, but once I got settled in, I found it somewhat rewarding. The finale episode especially was incredibly touching. If you got anything out of this video, please watch another, or subscribe, or fight me in the comments. Lots of options. All right, see y'all.